Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to talk about pure Korean numbers. Now, last time we learned about Sino-Korean numbers, which came from Chinese. Pure Korean numbers came from Korea, and they're used for counting all sorts of things, from people to animals to objects, and even to say how old you are. However, there are only pure Korean numbers from 1 to 99. To count anything beyond 99, instead just use Sino-Korean numbers. But actually, these days most Koreans will switch to using Sino-Korean numbers for counting anything beyond 49. So that was just a quick introduction into pure Korean numbers. Now let's learn how we can count using pure Korean numbers from 1 to 10. Practice along with me. 하나, 둘, 셋, 넷, 다섯, 여섯, 일곱, 여덟, 아홉, 열. Notice that 8 is pronounced as 여덟. So practice those numbers a bit and then let's move on. Next, let's talk about how to count from 11 to 29. Now, the way that counting works in pure Korean is similar to Sino-Korean with one difference. In Sino-Korean, the largest number that you used up until 99 was just 10. But in pure Korean, there are numbers for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90. So let's see how that looks. So 11 would be 10 plus 1, 20 would be just 20, 42 would be 40 plus 2, and 55 would be 50 plus 5. So here are some examples. 11, 열하나, 12, 열둘, 13, 열셋, 14, 열넷, 15, 열다섯, 16, 열여섯, 17, 열일곱, 18, 열여덟, 19, 열아홉, 20, 스물, 21, 스물하나, 22, 스물둘, 25, 스물다섯, 28, 스물여덟, and 29, 스물아홉. So now that we've learned how to count from 1 to 29, let's finish up our pure Korean numbers with 30 all the way until 99. So here are the important numbers that you need to go from 30 to 99. 30, 서른, 40, 마흔, 50, 쉰, 60, 예순, 70, 일흔, 80, 여든, 90, 아흔, 99, 아흔, 아홉. And again, remember that after 99, simply switch to Sino-Korean numbers. So use 백 for 100. And again, these days Koreans will just switch to Sino-Korean numbers for counting anything over 49. And there aren't any pure Korean numbers that you even have to learn beyond 99. Now, learning all pure Korean numbers from 50 to 99 may prove useful to you, but it's not essential for most daily conversations. So first, just focus on 1 to 10, as well as the numbers 20, 30, and 40. Next, let's look at something that you can use pure Korean numbers for right away, and that is counting someone's age, how old someone is. And you can do that using the counter 살. Now, 살 is a counter, meaning a noun that is used together with numbers to count something. 살 does not mean age by itself, but only when used together with a pure Korean number. And we learned how to calculate your Korean age in an earlier lesson. So now we can use this counter, 살, to say how old we are. For example, 저는 17살이에요. I am 17 years old. 저는 29살이에요. I am 29 years old. 저는 35살이에요. I am 35 years old. Now, there are a few exceptions with pure Korean numbers when you're using them before a noun or before a counter. And those are just the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 20. So let's take a look at how that works. Whenever 1, 하나, is used before a noun or a counter, it will become 한. 아기는 한 살이에요. The baby is 1 year old. 둘, for 2 will become 두. 아기는 2살이에요. The baby is 2 years old. 셋, for 3 will become 세. 아이는 3살이에요. The child is 3 years old. 넷, for 4 will become 네. 아이는 4살이에요. The child is 4 years old. And 스물, for 20, will become just 스무. 저는 20살이에요. I am 20 years old. Note that this exception only affects these numbers directly before a counter or a noun. For example, you'll still say 스물다섯 directly before a counter as 스물다섯. Alright, we've learned a lot of new things since we first learned to introduce ourselves many lessons ago. So let's do a new introduction with a new person, 최윤소. Here's an example of how you can introduce yourself as well as say your age. 안녕하세요. Hello. 제 이름은 최윤소예요. My name is 최윤소. 저는 한국 사람이고 서울에서 왔어요. I am a Korean and I am from Seoul. 제 취미는 댄스하고 독서예요. My hobbies are dance and reading. 32살이에요. I am 32 years old. 만나서 반가워요. Nice to meet you.
안녕하세요. 제 이름은 최윤소예요. 저는 한국 사람이고 서울에서 왔어요. 제 취미는 댄스하고 독서예요. 32살이에요. 만나서 반가워요.
But before we go, let's learn about one more important counter that you can use for saying how old someone is. And that is, if you want to show extra respect towards someone, you can use the counter 세 instead of 살. Here's how that works. It's always important to show extra respect toward other adults or toward strangers. And the counter 세 has the same meaning as 살, but it is used instead with Sino-Korean numbers. Note that 세 sounds a bit more formal than 살, but it's still okay to use it when talking about yourself. And 세 is most commonly used when talking about anyone older than 50 years. For example, 우리 할머니께서는 85세이세요. My grandmother is 85 years old. 85세. Here, remember that 이세요 comes from the verb 이시다, which is the honorific form of the verb 이다, to be. And one more quick note before we go. All of the numbers that we've used so far have been written down using Hangul, and this is just to help you practice reading those numbers. In reality, numbers are written just using numbers. For example, 저는 34살이에요. I am 34 years old. And now that we've learned how to use Sino-Korean numbers and pure Korean numbers, next we're going to learn how to use more counters. So make sure to practice both Sino-Korean and pure Korean numbers before moving on. Alright, we've learned a lot so far in this lesson too, so practice everything and I'll see you again in the next lesson where we'll talk about counters more. 그럼 다음에 또 봐!